Before we kick off this week's edition, we have to go through the standard rules of Comicphiles. You know, without rules, what kind of structure can you have within the show? It'll be real quick. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. So, that's weird. The pages seem to be blank. That's because there are no rules on Comicphiles. On this week's edition, our team is rule breakers. Not even going to recycle that. No, I probably should. We're going to kick things off with something that I'm really not familiar with at all. It's an Archie Comics book called Jughead #1 by Chip Zdarsky and Erica Henderson. So Jughead is a part of the wider world that is the Archie Comics universe. Jughead is about this guy named Jughead Jones who's very apathetic towards authority, and he's something of a slacker who's never really reached his full potential. Also, he dresses like an idiot. The only way I could describe it is, you know those tacky crowns you get in Christmas crackers that people put on their head for like an hour and then they fall apart? That's what he wears every day. I don't know how long the Archie comics go back or how long this character goes back throughout the decades, but maybe it was a trendy statement back then, but now I look at that and I go like, sort your life, mate. Moving away from fashion tips is the more lighthearted side of things, which is the story itself. Jughead is basically, he's Zach Morris versus Mr. Belding. That's the premise of this, with a few references thrown in from different franchises like Game of Thrones and Skyrim. And it's basically a very humorous tale about this kid who is obsessed with food and video games and doing nothing against this very straight-laced principal who's just, oh, you can't be having any of this anarchy in town. Oh, I won't be having it in my school. That kind of way. It's very cliche. It's kind of a charm to it. You do get a sense that the writer had something of a love of 90s and 80s tropes when he was making this, which makes it all the better. It actually makes it quite fun and bubbly. We know now that it's smartly written and it's humorous, and the story in itself is kind of innocuous because it's all about just the shenanigans that are going to go down within these parodies that they create. But the art itself is an entirely different story. The art is done by Erica Henderson, who does the current run of Squirrel Girl, and I have to recommend it based entirely on the art just by itself. The writing, as I said, is very enjoyable, it's very fun, but the art here is something else. I really like the style she brings to it. She manages to bring a goofy style of art integrated into a comedy book, and it works so seamlessly well that it makes you want to keep reading and keep viewing these beautiful illustrations that have been created by Erica. There's really not a lot more to say. I mean, it's a slice of life comic. There's not a great deal of depth to it. It's just designed to be a quick and easy thing to pick up, and that's how I found it. So our #2 first issue is Street Fighter Unlimited, and wow, this comic is so stupid. It's just... Street Fighter Unlimited tells the tale of Ryu as he's trying to control his mad inner demon self. But his inner demon self keeps coming out and it keeps attacking all of his friends, and he needs to look back on his past and realize that he's not that person. He needs to realize that he has to be the man his sensei wants him to be, even though he killed his sensei. And then he killed his schoolgirl protege because he was just that mad. He just was mad with power. We cut to like present day with Ryu and Ken, and Ryu is just brooding over this tragic past, that backstory which I've just described. Ken is pretty much like, dude, like, why are you so mad about it? And Ryu's just spouts off every endless cliche in the book, like, oh, my dark and twisted mind will never let me forget that horrible incident. Street Fighter's Jared Leto from the Suicide Squad. That's what's going on here. And it's stupid. It's very anime. It's so generic. Ryu invites Sagat to come in and train him. Sagat, if you don't know, is a guy with an eye patch who's really cool. He's in the Street Fighter games and he's always the rival of Ryu and Ken. He comes in and Ken is like, oh, Sagat has killed people. I can't be a part of this whatsoever, Ryu. So he takes the moral high ground. And then what happens is Ryu fights Sagat. There's a lot of fighting in this comic. And then Ryu walks up to Ken's car just before he's about to leave. Ken turns around and says like, hey man, you want to come on a trip with me? I've kind of forgotten about that whole Sagat thing that happened a minute ago. So, do you wanna go on a road trip, bro? That's effectively what happens. They head off in search of wisdom in order to get rid of his inner demon self that he's in control of right now. So it doesn't really make sense. We leave Ryu and Ken to their own volition, and we get introduced to the two villains of the tale, which is Vega, the masked cage fighter who wears Freddy Krueger's claw, and not M. Bison. It's a guy wearing M. Bison's clothes whose face we don't see, even though the rest of the room's illuminated perfectly, but his face is dark because anime style writing. They prattle on for a wee bit about nothing in particular, probably world domination. I wasn't paying that much attention because I was quite caught off guard by the next panel that popped up. Chun-Li in full kidnap mode. She's tied up, she's helpless, and they're just kind of looking at her. The two female characters that are present in this comic. So the first one was Ryu's protege. She was dressed as a schoolgirl, and she got killed. Second one is Chun-Li, who is the most recognizable character in all of Street Fighter. And what's she doing? She's kidnapped, isn't she? So your two women characters are dead and tied up. Is that what we're going with? The art style's good, I suppose. When you see that as your first issue, what else is there to say? The art style's good. The story is long sequences of fights and brooding, and then Chun-Li is kidnapped. The other part of it is a non-consequential story that is not related to any of it. But on the very last page is a Zangief short cartoon that is probably better than the entire comic as a whole. Why don't we just leave that one over here? Because it was stupid. It was not good. Last one on our list will henceforth be known as The Beautiful, the last gang in town. In 1970s England, we follow a group of punk rock enthusiasts who become fledgling criminals. This is during the height of the punk rock revolution, and in this time, anarchy is reigning supreme. Because of these criminals' nature towards this particular type of music, they've decided that rebelling against authority is the way that they should go. And this is the initial heist that they start off with in issue number 1 of Last Gang in Town. We find out the legacy that they entail upon the world through these magical panels of beauty. The art style in this, I don't think I've ever described art like this. The art style in this punches you in the gut and takes your money. It's an assault on the senses. It works so perfectly with the concept that they have here. I saw this first issue on the shelf and it stood out to me, and then I was pleasantly surprised by the consistent coloring scheme and art style that they brought into place for this, because it matches everything perfectly. And the story itself, while a bit derivative, is very fast moving, it's very action packed. If you're into that sort of thing, then you're really going to love this, because it's a story of great characters who are free-willed in nature of bringing out swears and saying what they feel like. You get a buzz from watching all of these people interact. We only get a glimpse of one particular decade in this and a hint of what is to come, but I am really excited to see what they do later in the issues of this comic. Hope you enjoyed everything you saw here today. If you did, why not give us a like, subscribe, and comment down below. That's all for today, guys. I'll see you on the next Comic Files.
I'm gonna go for the ugly one. Yellow with brown splotches. Please be found. Is it a shoe? I don't know what that one is. It's really familiar. So probably not a shoe.